I'm Garland Perkins. I have the honor of working with SEPC on their education initiatives, and we are so glad that y'all got up bright and early to join us for what is sure to be a very valuable and engaging discussion this morning. Now, before I jump in, I'd like to recognize our sponsors this morning for our educational session: Alsam Farms and Produce, B&W Quality Growers, Bova Fresh, City Roots, Classic Harvest, Driscoll's, First Fruits Farms, Florida Classic Growers, Robinson Fresh, and Vidalia Sweet Produce, as well as our educational sessions refreshment area sponsors: F&S Fresh Foods, Fowler Farms, Goodness Gardens, Great Lakes Greenhouses, National Mango Board, New York Apple Association, Super Fresh Growers, Washington Fruit Growers, WP Produce, and Zespri Kiwi Fruit. If we could give our sponsors a round of applause. Thank you for your support. I'd also like to remind everyone about the SEPC app. If you haven't downloaded that already, please make sure you do so that you stay up to date with everything that's happening at Southern Exposure throughout the weekend. And then I'd also like to turn your attention to SEPC's antitrust policy, which was supposed to be on the screen, but I think you're all aware of what an antitrust policy is, so please be mindful that that is in effect for today's session. Now, in alignment with this year's theme, chosen by Chairman Sloan Lott, From Fields to Families, the idea behind the session is that we really wanted to give growers a venue to truly have their voices be heard. And that vision led to today's session, which is aptly titled The State of Agriculture. Today, you're going to hear the good, the bad, and the opportunities that these growers see for our industry, along with ideas for how we can work together more effectively to build a stronger, more resilient fresh produce industry for generations to come. We're honored to have outstanding representation on our panel today, including first, second, and third generation farmers, as well as a valuable retail perspective from our moderator, Robbie Cruz. He is Vice President of Produce and Floral at Target, and he brings more than 3 decades of hands-on experience in the grocery industry. Robbie is known for his deep product knowledge and hands-on leadership style, and has built a reputation for optimizing fresh food operations, strengthening supply partnerships, and elevating the customer experience. And of course, as we're all aware, Target is one of the top 5 US supermarket chains with almost 2,000 stores across 50 states. And our grower panelists today include Steve Church, chairman of Church Brothers Farms. Steve is a Salinas Valley native and has spent nearly 60 years in the produce industry. He started in the lettuce fields at the age of 15, where he developed a passion for the produce business and his work ethic. He earned a degree in agricultural business from Arizona State University, and in 1999, he co-founded Church Brothers Farms with his brother Tom, growing it into a vertically integrated, family-owned vegetable company. He now serves as chairman after passing on the CEO role to his nephew Brian to lead the next generation of the family business. We also have Sarah Fry, CEO and founding farmer of Fry Farms, a leading certified women-owned agribusiness headquartered in South Florida with roots in Southern Illinois. Starting the company at age 16, she has grown it into America's largest producer of fresh pumpkins, earning her the nickname America's Pumpkin Queen, and a top grower, shipper, and marketer of watermelons and other fresh fruits and vegetables. Sarah oversees a vertically integrated family of companies spanning 7 states, encompassing land acquisition, regenerative agriculture practices, raw ingredient manufacturing, and a full-scale beverage business. And lastly, we have Ashley Rawl, Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Product Development at WP Rawl. He spent his childhood summers working in the field alongside other family members, learning the business founded by his grandparents over 100 years ago. After earning his agricultural economics degree from Clemson University, go Tigers, in 1994, he joined the family business, which he has watched grow from what was primarily a vegetable and peach cannery operation to a major grower, processor, and shipper of quality fresh vegetables. Ashley also oversees the company's over-the-road transportation fleet, harvesting, and plant operations. We're so grateful for the panelists being willing to share their time, candid insights, and expertise with us. And I can tell you, being involved in the preparation for this event, they have put so much time and thought into today's discussion, really with the goal of ensuring that what they share is meaningful for all of us in this room, but also in the best interest of the industry. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Robbie to kick us off.
Thank you, Garland. Hopefully everyone had a good time yesterday, either playing golf or pickleball or just enjoying the Florida sun. I know we've had a lot of snow out there across the country, and so thank you for joining us this early morning. And thank you, Steve, Sarah, and Ashley for going through this. So without further ado, we'll get into some of the questions that we have there.
Great.
And so we'll start with you, Ashley. How would you describe the current state of agriculture today? And what are the most significant forces, both opportunities and challenges, that you see shaping your operations over the next few years?
Yep. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Robbie, and thank you, SEPC, for allowing me to be a part of this group here this morning to represent the grower shipper community. Farmers are just forever optimists, and we'll portray that here today, but I think we do want to talk about some of the headwinds that are against the industry. I'll start at the macro level in ag. There's a tremendous amount of headwinds, and this past 12, 18 months, if you have not had related to a cow, the ag industry's probably been pretty tough in a lot of ways. But there are ways we can get out of that. And if I had to pick one word to describe the farming industry currently, I would say like a shop vice. Being farmers, we're all familiar with shop vices. And on one side, we have volatility, whether it's the weather, disease pressure, labor, which H2A, we really have no control over, our input cost, and not to mention the land values currently that farmers are grappling with. And then on the other side, we have the rigidity of specs, the audits that are multiple for multiple different reasons that we'll dive into today, and then government regulation. And so then we have the farmers that are in the middle trying to let this country eat for the lowest price in the world. So just want to be mindful of that. And another concern is it may not be cyclical, or it's really a structural issue, it seems, kind of at this time with some of these programs. But so there is a lot of optimism. We are on the front lines of healthcare, helping America eat healthier. So, but really, I would just say a shop vice as an overall theme.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, thanks for me being here. Appreciate it. In Salinas, Sarah, and they're from the East Coast, and I'm from the West Coast, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the West Coast agriculture. You always, when the grower shipper sends out a survey of what are the most important things, it's labor, food safety, and water. And water is taken care of this year. California states we're not in a drought anymore. Food safety, that's kind of a work in progress as we're always trying to find the needle in the haystack out there. And labor, the H2A has helped the area in Salinas and Yuma, Arizona. So the landscape's changed a little bit in Salinas, where especially on the salad producers, there's a lot of people that have merged together. The Dole, Braga, and Organic Girl merged to one company. We just bought Man Packing, and Taylor's gobbled up a few companies. So it's changed. It's almost changed like from 9 different companies down to 5 now. And I talk about major salads people. Some of the threats out there, I know coming up, and not only for California, but for the whole produce industry. I've read we're short 80,000 truckers, drivers. It sounds pretty high, but that could be a problem that comes down the road here in the next year. And I know that all the new driver's license are, and they're in English. So that could be something that we could look for. I know I get asked a lot, as GPL1 affecting your business, and I don't have I asked one retailer and he wouldn't tell me what, if their business has changed. But I think that it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, you GPL1s, we have the best solution for you in the business, fruits and vegetables.
Love that. Sarah, anything you want to add on?
Oh, he pretty well summed it up. We're on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast. We share so many of the same challenges. I think for the group here this morning, we in the produce industry, we spend so much of our time sort of in a tactical stance because so much of what we do is time sensitive, urgent. It's got to make it happen today, today, today. So we're not often afforded the luxury of strategic thinking. But many of the issues that we're facing today, that we're fighting sort of like very tactically, are going to ultimately morph into bigger issues in the future that I think that we have to be thinking about strategically. I mean, one of the points that Steve made that sort of struck me was water's okay in California right now. They've had all, and that's actually a very rare statement. I'm really happy to hear you say that. But the first thing that came into my mind is our operations are by and large east of the Mississippi in 7 different states. And I think in our country, we're going to see really we're going to see a proliferation of AI. What does it take to power AI? And water is one of the biggest things. And I think farmers right now have to kind of look out into the future and think about how that's going to impact their business. For instance, in southern Indiana, when I started, my family and my brothers and I started growing there many, many years ago, you didn't need a permit to drill a well, and you could hit water at 60 to 80 feet. And it was like, all right, let's go, free flowing water, let's do this. The state of Indiana, for example, has been really trying to recruit some big AI centers in. And now there are conversations beginning about how do they regulate the water for that. So I think many in California is probably sitting back thinking, okay, all right. And now it's your turn a few times to go through what we've been through. But I would just say, we share a lot of the same challenges. I'd like to echo what Ashley discussed as well. We are farmers, so we are optimists. You have to be. But we have some serious challenges facing our industry that are going to require really strengthening our partnerships with major retailers, all of our retail partners, because we have some challenges, not just here today that we're dealing with tactically, but we have some challenges in the not so distant future that we're going to need our partners to tackle those challenges with us.
Yeah, I mean, from a retailer's perspective, it's about just having those conversations and that transparency. And we're going to touch on a little bit later on about how do we continue to help the younger generation understand what's happening. I think a lot of it also is just understanding East Coast versus Midwest versus West Coast, because those all could be different things or could all be combined at one time. But having those conversations, like as I'm talking to my buyers, they need to understand what's happening in Florida or what's happening in California. I mean, I was born and raised in California. To say that we're out of a drought was just crazy to me to think about that. So,
Robbie, if I could, one ask as we were talking about this is all of the challenges that we all face, and we understand every one of our customers in here has metrics. We all have metrics, but if there's anything that we can standardize as it relates to audits, whether it's food safety, the new sustainability, the ethical sourcing, it's nothing to do 3 to 5 different audits for some of these. And I think as an industry, we could help drive out some cost. If we had, this is the baseline. This is what you have to do to play ball at a certain level. I don't really know the answers, but I think that's part of the discussion that we wanted to put out to the group. We don't have the answers. We just want to collaborate and discuss and see what we can do together to lower the cost of food where we can,
Yeah.
or control what we can.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us into the next question. And I'll start with you, Steve. But agriculture has faced immense change from unpredictable weather, just think about the Florida freeze that we had a few weeks ago, to shifting global markets. What steps are you taking to strengthen your business against these outside pressures and supply reliability?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll talk about some of the issues. Like when I talked about labor and food safety and all that, in the Salinas Valley, the new one pops up for me is the weather and what it does to our crops. And there's two instances. There's a slide out there, but I can describe it. That in 2022 we had in Salinas we had INSV, impatiens virus, and it ruined about 30% of our crop. And it's the first slide on my left, where it shows, the green is the supply and the dark line is the markets. And we got markets up to $90 for a box of lettuce, which is unheard of. And it just seems like these storms and things are affecting us. And so the next slide is 1995. I'm sorry, 2000, it's 2025. It was just last fall. And same thing happened in a way, a different way. It was warm in Salinas. Then we got rains. The warmth caused more INSV to come in, but it was at the tail end. And then you had monsoon storms in Arizona and Yuma and Imperial Valley that put a lot of product underwater, and under LGMA rules, you can't, even if it goes down, you can't harvest it. So those are two things, and it just seems like it's more of an effect. Now, it's very hard. What can we do about it? We basically plant for our customers. We planted in Salinas, Huron, and Yuma as the transition goes on. And we had trouble in all three places, and it was all based on weather. So it's a difficult situation, and maybe next year we go more to Santa Maria or Oxnard and all that. But I know a company that last year went to Idaho to try to grow iceberg lettuce, and he failed. And he failed because he couldn't get the yields and he couldn't make money on it. So there's very few places in the world that you can grow good iceberg lettuce. Broccoli's different. Romaine, you can grow it different, but iceberg is a real tough one. So we try to fulfill orders, and sometimes we can't. But hopefully, you get some seed-resistant seeds that are resistant to the INSV. But we found that they didn't yield very good either. So those are some of the things that we're going through with weather.
Yeah, Sarah, how about you, with you growing in so many different states? What's your point of view on that?
Our challenges geographically, they're so different across all of the commodities. I mean, we're growing leafy greens in Florida. The majority, we're best known as America's largest pumpkin farm, but that's actually the smallest part of what we do. That's centered in the Midwest. So sustainability really kind of looks different for us in all of the different growing regions. From, sustainability in Florida looks very different than sustainability in the Midwest. I think for us, one of the things that ultimately we try to focus on is, at the end of the day, the produce industry, we're in a commodity business, right? So we're still, it's not corn and bean commodities, but it's still commodities. So when you're in a commodity business, you look at ways to maximize profits that you return to the farm. Unfortunately for us, because we grow in so many different locations, standardization across, the sustainability programs is somewhat difficult. But at the end of the day, the one thing that remains sort of a core consistency is that no matter where we're growing, we're trying to figure out how we take up more pieces of the value chain, and constantly we ask ourselves the question that all farmers have to ask themselves: how do you do more with less? And then how do you make more of what you have? So crop utilization is generally the thing that we are most focused on, and whether that is working with our retail partners and trying to make sure that we ultimately are able to have programs with them that are full crop utilization, then that's actually the thing that led us into ingredient manufacturing. Because at the end of the day, we're producing a commodity that we have to get as much, out of that harvest and yield as we possibly can. So we had to figure out ways in order to take the watermelons that didn't meet the particular retail standards, turn them into juice. How do you do that on the farm through on the farm manufacturing? Same with the pumpkins, the leafy greens, all of the different commodities that we grow. So that's really kind of our focus at Fry, and it's ever changing because at the end of the day, we're also kind of like a band of gypsies in the company following the sun from the southeast all the way up through the different growing cycles into the Midwest. So it's very different in each location geographically.
I wish I had your shelf life on pumpkins.
I'll echo Steve on that. But, as far as farm resiliency and the supply chain reliability, it isn't currently a defining expectation with surety of supply. We kind of hit it with three different ways. Very similar to theirs, geographic diversity. We're following the sun, they're following the latitude. We farm in 4 different states, Florida, South Carolina, Michigan, and Pennsylvania throughout the seasons. And then being very intentional in your planting schedules. We're typically planting somewhere in the U.S. between our 4 regions every other day. A lot of our crops can be from 35 to leeks, just say 120, 150 days. But so we're planting somewhere, and it's almost an engineering process, the planting schedules today. And, we grade ourselves against those. It's not at the end of the season, did we have the number of boxes we said? It's based on the week. But so an ask there is the numbers that we get from our partners is extremely important in engineering those plans, because those plans are only as good as the numbers that we put in them. We're looking at averages of weather across time and yield, but collectively we can make some improvements there together. And just know that growers are actively trying to mitigate all the risk that they can. But they cannot do it alone. They can't do it in a vacuum or a silo. It takes great partners. And we're blessed to have a lot of those great partners represented here in the room today.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into this next question and talking through partnerships. So you were talking about like just transparency. And so maybe Sarah, I'll start with you. What makes a customer a truly great partner in today's environment, and what behaviors help you navigate challenges together?
The partners that we have the most successful business relationship with are the partners that proactively do joint business planning with us. And throughout, really, if I'm being honest, the only way that I was able to, start this business as a teenage kid, by the way, the produce industry is one of the greatest industries because, and we also live in one of the greatest countries in the world where a kid can start selling melons out the back of a pickup truck. And then, a couple years after that, start selling to the nation's largest retailer. I know that times have changed and stories like that are, few now. But I would say throughout the history and building those partnerships, the best partners have been the partners that, like I said, proactively did business planning with us and felt invested in the crops and also invested in the risks that we were taking to grow alongside of them. And the best partners are often the partners that are most flexible. So throughout the years, we used to, for those who've been in this industry from it, where there was a buyer that maybe you used to communicate with, and maybe your purchase orders years ago came over, believe it or not, on a fax machine. And then there was a time when you might have been co-managing your business, you would do joint business planning, and then you were co-managing the business where you were actually into your retail partner systems and you were cutting the POs and managing the business. And then there's been an evolution, and now today a computer does all of that thinking for the buyer and the supplier and tells you what you need. And for a period of time, we went through a transition where there wasn't that human involvement. And in our business, I mean, you have to. We talked about being reactive earlier. You have to be able to be reactive. So if a computer system is generating what it thinks it needs for the customers, and oh well, and you don't have that human contact anymore, that creates challenges when you have sort of, maybe you have more of a supply at a certain period of time, and you don't have that flexibility of getting a human on the phone and saying, hey, we're getting ready to have a glut period in our harvest over the next 3 days, can you take more of this volume off of the market? It used to be such that a buyer could make that decision and say, yeah, let's take that volume off of the market, we'll lower our retails and be able to help you work through that. So some of the challenges that we've had, even with our best and most sophisticated partners, has been also sort of going through those growing pains of getting, getting up to speed on the newest and latest, greatest technologies. And over time, those things kind of get worked out. But I've seen a lot of opportunities where it was really the farmer that kind of got hurt as we were working through this, new technological challenges and implementing new systems for growth. So I think there's been, for us, we've been able to communicate those challenges and have an open dialogue with our customers and work through those challenges, and also, give our sort of unfiltered opinion. I think it's very important to be able to talk to your customers and not, there's kind of a lot of hand wringing. Oh, I don't know if could I sit down and have a conversation with you, and
Yeah.
tell you exactly what's going on with my business? Those days are over. I think we have to be able to have very brutally honest conversations, always in the spirit of partnership with our customers, to work through market gluts and to work through a lot. It's a challenging time for retailers in their business. I'm on the board of FMI, and it's interesting to go in and sit down and listen to the CEOs of major retail companies, talk of like, we live in our own worlds, but then to hear your challenges and the things that our retail partners are facing, I think it's important for us as a supplier community not to get so caught up in our day to day that we actually have we need to have also a better understanding of what our customers are going through, because at the end of the day, it's our collective business together, and any good partnership is not one-sided. So I I think we've been fortunate throughout the years, but I think that there's always room for growth and improvement when it comes to joint business planning, collaborating with our customers.
Steve, Ashley,
Yeah.
anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll define a truly great customer as the one that you don't prorate. My brother Tom, he was I believe a marketing genius, and he never said no to any customers. And I'll give you one story that's back in our River Ranch days. Sometimes a lot of the young people, they don't want to hear about the olden days, but if we live in I'm 77 years old, and the young people, they don't like hearing about us, but they got their own mind of how to do things. But anyway, story is that a long time ago, when we were at River Ranch, there was a company called Bruno's Supermarkets. And a gentleman named David Sherrod worked there. He was the buyer. You guys know David? we, we call him brother. Um, anyway, my brother and David got together at Bruno's, and we did commodities and value added together. And this is probably not a new concept, but it really worked. And they put 6 truckloads a week to ship and to deliver to Bruno's. And the key was freshness. And it was really wasn't unique, but we had you would every day they got fresh delivery of all the items that we had, which was great. I know Bruno's is no longer a name anymore, but David Sherrod sure is.
Ashley, anything you wanted to add on that?
Really, not a lot to add that
Yeah.
they've said. It's consistency, transparency, and the joint business planning. But also, do we have a let me see, joint problem solving? A what if scenario as we're doing the joint business planning? Do we have a what if section that's also a part of that? Because things are going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think, from a retailer's perspective, as I think about the new buying teams kind of coming up, I mean, I was lucky enough, produce was in the business for my family. And so I've learned every role from the stores to procurement to buying to merchandising. And I think it's all the talent that's in this room, and Steve, as you talk about like all your stories that you've had, is kind of like it makes us who we are today. And so I think we owe it to the next generation to kind of help them understand the reasoning why we've gone through these over the years of how it impacts the stores or how it impacts our supply chain. And your passion is going to come through. And so that for me and my team, it's always about like helping them understand even all our acronyms we use, because sometimes we just throw them out there and they have zero idea what OTIF is or even some of those things. And so I actually have a buyer here this week named Chase. He absolutely loves buying produce. I mean, the passion that comes from him is amazing, and that's what we got to instill into the future with the buyers that are out there. And so, appreciate all your guys' insight there. So, on the next question that we have here, how does program flexibility, pricing responsiveness, retail decisions such as PO cancellations, you said we don't prorate those, Steve, so that's good, or strict specs affect your business? What would you like to see from the grower side of improvements for the business? For just flexibility, PO pricing, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, what's changed a little bit is 10 years ago, I'd say 50% of the product was on contract and in our business. And now today, it's up there 80, 90%. And it's difficult when things get tight. But it's almost like you can't grow more because there's no more open market. There's hardly any more open market. So it's a fine line. But we have flexible pricing of high-low contract, full contract, or even open market. So we try to be flexible. And I think like with specs, there's certain times when you need to change the spec, but you got to call. I know I was just saying customers can understand that there's problems, but they can't understand not being told about them. I know Robbie said the worst thing is to first hear about that problem when the truck's in the warehouse. So there's certain things that we have to work with the customer. I have 2 rules of customers. Rule number 1, the customer is always right. Rule number 2, if he's wrong, revert to rule number 1.
That's excellent words of wisdom. I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, he pretty well summed it up, Ashley.
Having been involved in our family farming here in Florida for close to 30 years now, this really hit close to home. When we were first talking about doing this, we had not had the weather event that we had earlier this month, late January, early February. So my thoughts and prayers to all Florida farmers out here as we still try to figure out what's next. So with that being said, I think flexibility increases supply. It doesn't decrease, of course, but not talking about decay, but I think there's collaborative ways we can work together, whether it's sizing, count on some things to really make a difference to shorten these devastating events. Because when we all start, we have this engineered planning schedule that's out 12, 16 months. When we start reaching, we're still creating issues. But if there's a way not to reach, satisfy the consumer, we have to do it with the customer or the housewife or the husband in mind. But I think there's ways we can back up and be creative and collaborative to get the product on the shelf and still make the farmer and the customers and the retail partner whole.
I'd piggyback actually onto that and say, just from experience, I've found that the customers that we have the partnerships with that allow that sizing flexibility and kind of do a good job of rolling with us throughout the season, because we all know no two growing seasons are alike. They're just not. And you're going to have challenges. And if you're proactively communicating those challenges, the crop's coming off at this size, at this range, the partnerships that we have that are most responsive to the needs for us to make sizing or spec change almost always seem to be the most competitive retailers, because it's not that you're just doing your grower partner a favor because they have a different size or a different spec. It's actually helping your bottom line as well, because if you can respond to that and say, let's take a bin of watermelons, for example, maybe it was maybe you're buying a 40 count or a 45 count, and the crop this year is the majority of 60 count. Being able to pivot quickly and work with your grower partner, get a new retail into the system, actually sort of puts you at a great competitive advantage, because now you're not selling the $8 or $9 watermelon. Yeah, it's not the spec that generally you're used to offering your customers, but now you might be selling a $5 or a $6 watermelon and you're beating your competition. So really kind of like the observation that I've had is that's not just smart and good for the grower, that's good for the retailer as well, which is great for the partnership. And being able to have that flexibility and to be able to pivot and work with your growers can actually put you in a stronger retail position.
Yeah, we touched on a few things here. We touched on, rejections and stuff like that. As I think about as we've been having conversations, that's what needs to happen with the buyers ahead of time so that they know what's coming down the pipeline. We also have someone here from our QM team. And to your point, Steve, once it gets to our FDC, it's too late. Like if you didn't tell me that there was a needed adjustment, we're not going to make it on the fly most of those times. And so we need to make sure that we understand ahead of time, what is it that you're looking for? Is it happening in the industry? Is it something that's just on the East Coast, maybe versus Midwest versus West Coast? All of those conversations helps us to be able to talk to our QC, QM teams out there and letting them also know what's coming down the pipeline. I think the other thing that you talked about also was selling off open market versus contracts. With the buyers today, they have so many more commodities that they're all been tasked to buy. That they're having to go to contracts because they're not going to be able to have conversations with all the different growers for all the different commodities that they have. And so we'll continue to go down this contract road, I think, as an industry from the retail perspective, but it's just having those conversations again about where's it at, where we at. Because the last thing we want to do is disappoint our guest when they walk into our store and we don't have that product. And so I love some of the answers that you guys talked about. We'll change it up once again, and we'll talk about farm resilience and long-term sustainability. And so growers must balance environmental stewardship with business realities. What sustainable practices have you found to be both environmentally smart and economically feasible?
You know, sustainability is the new food safety. We've got starting to hire people like food safety. I don't know, we probably have 40 people in our food safety, and now we had one sustainability person, and now we have two. And I really believe we were working towards sustainability, but now we're getting calls from retailers and food service people that want records of what you're doing and data and all that. So we don't want 41 different programs. We need to be one program. But some of the things like we built years ago a cogen engine to help with energy, and it was supposed to save us money. It's run by natural gas, and the gas market goes up, so it's not as great as it did. But we're making an effort. And on the farm, we basically do a lot of different things like drip irrigation. We have a lot of different machinery out there, but it's we just keep working on everything we can to make this thing better.
One of our company values is stewardship, which underneath that we have oversee, protect, and grow. So sustainability falls underneath that for us. Um, but it must be operational and also economically feasible. We're in our 101st year of operation, and our goal is to keep on growing. So everything has to be sustainable. We have solar that powers our processing plant in Pillion, South Carolina. We do a lot of composting. Our green waste that goes out of our facility and the wastewater. The wastewater is used to grow hay in hay fields, and then that brown is mixed with the green that comes out for composting that goes back on some of our property as well. We use laser weeders, and probably the biggest thing that we've done in the last 18 months was we built a sorting facility for waste outside of our facility. It's behind it just to sort our waste streams. And there's multiple balers there. And so we can streamline all of the different waste coming out. And what we've been able to take out of the landfill has been pretty remarkable in the last year. So really excited about that continuing to mature and seeing where we can take that. But farmers are the original environmentalists. If we don't take care of our land, it's not going to take care of us. And so
one other example that Ashley talked about, we have these big bins that we bring lettuce and romaine in, and it's the liners. And I told our gal, hey, we need to do something about these. And so we sent them, we baled the liners, sent them to LA, and they actually made plastic pellets to make more plastic, unfortunately. But the main thing is, Ashley said, the landfill is not being, we're eliminating it. We're not making any money on it, but we're certainly helping the landfill part of it.
Yeah, I mean, from a retailer's perspective, I think the growers are doing a lot, and it's like, how do we let the guests know everything you're doing? The difficultness of that is if you're doing something a little bit different, Ashley, than what you're doing, Sarah, than what you're doing, and so it's hard for us to almost market all these things that you're doing out there. One of the buzzwords out there is like regenerative growing. Well, I can partner with one grower for regenerative growing, but I can't necessarily market that in our stores if everybody's not doing it for that commodity. And so it's definitely something that we're going to have to work on as an industry, is how do we call out some of the great things that you growers are doing out there. So looking ahead, what types of collaboration or innovation will be most critical for keeping the fresh produce industry strong for the next generation?
For us, I think that our processing plants they've got like Ferrari equipment in it, and they're very good. But when it comes to out in the field, it's hard. And I had a picture of a lettuce harvester from the 1950s to what it is today. So it's a tractor with a big belt, and the only difference is that it's stainless steel now and newer tractors. So, where I really believe we need it is in the harvesting of iceberg and romaine in the field, and not have so many people. And I think in the next 5 years, you'll see a little bit of that. I've seen like on romaine hearts and celery hearts out in the field now that there's some flow wrap, which I think it's going to be better packaging and less bruising on the product.
Sarah?
Could you repeat the question?
Yep.
Hey,
As you,
take me back. I was thinking about in my mind laser weed killers and everything. It was like I was thinking about all this new equipment.
what's most critical for keeping the fresh produce industry strong for the next generation?
Um, so I really go back to my roots when I think about how we strengthen the future. And that is, I grew up on a small farm in southern Illinois as part of a whole gaggle of kids, and it was a very small farm. It wasn't the thousands of acres that we operate today. It was an 80-acre farm, and on that farm, nothing went to waste. We either grew, hunted, harvested the food that we ate, the food that we grew up on, and the coveted lifestyle now of clean eating and the inverted food pyramid is really how I grew up. And nothing went to waste on that farm. So you can imagine my surprise as the business grew and we expanded and became somewhat more of a commercialized operation. How shocked I was very shocked at the sheer amount of waste in our industry. Not just at the farm level, but also ultimately at the retail level. So one of the things that we've been really focused on throughout the history of Fry is asking ourselves the question of how do we do more with less, but also how do we use more of what we have. And that's forced us to really identify, it's actually forced us to be better business people too, because we've been able to identify markets and we've been forced to have to think creatively about what we do with food waste, how we handle food waste. And so food waste in general has been one of my passion projects because ultimately you have to, at the end of the day, you're always trying to figure out how do you return more profits back to the farm. And when you're working with these low margin commodities, it actually ends up, when you're thinking about how you do that, it ends up forcing you into thinking about and developing value add products. So for us, in our case, we're, at times maybe the largest or second largest watermelon producer in the US. So we were throwing away a lot of watermelons, and that was like breaking my heart, right? I'm like, it's not an ugly watermelon, it's not sunburnt. We like to call that sun-kissed, So what do we do with that melon? Okay, we bring it in and we want to make watermelon juice out of it. I don't care who we sell watermelon juice to. It doesn't need to be in our brand, but it needs to go into, another form than what our retailers are taking, and it needs to find a home. And then those profits from those melons that wouldn't otherwise be sold, those profits need to get returned back to the farm. So when I think about sustainability for Fry, the first thing that I think of is reduction in food waste. And how do we do that? Because ultimately, for me, when I'm thinking about things through that lens, it's the right thing to do for the farm, it's the right thing to do for consumers, and it's the right thing to do for the planet.
Yeah. I think there's an opportunity as we think about the next generation to help growers understand like what the day-to-day business of a buyer actually goes through too. And so as I think about what SEPC is doing with the Step Up program and the Next Generation Academy, we've sent someone from Target there for 3 years in a row. We'll send someone there every year moving forward. So David, there's your shout out for SEPC. So we appreciate everything you guys are doing there. Before we open it up for questions here, one last question is for this panel. Before we close, is there an idea, takeaway, or piece of advice you'd like to leave the audience? or someone new joining the industry?
I talked to somebody lately about that was not in a family business, and not, but this person worked their way up very quickly. And I said, what's the secret? She says, I worked my ass off. And and I think that in this business, there's certain things that you need to do, and I kind of wrote them down there, that read as much as you can about produce. Um, don't take things personal. That's a big one. Learn how to deal with difficult people. Be honest and be a great communicator.
Love that.
I think for me, it's less about advice and more of a reflection. I was at the reception last night and got to see all of the young people in our industry being recognized. And for me, I'm always hopeful. I come from a big family, and someone asked me recently, "Oh, do you think back on your accomplishments?" And I'm like, no, not really, because I still feel like I'm on the wheel every day, growing and building. I haven't gotten off the wheel. Like, who has time to sit back and think, "Wow, that's great. We did that." We rarely take those moments, but occasionally I do have those moments, but it's not the business that was built. It was the kids in our family that we've raised. I get to be a mom to two fantastic boys, and an auntie to nieces and nephews, and watching them go through their educational journey now. And like, most proud right now, my niece Audrey, my brother John's daughter, who recently was accepted to Cornell, and she's going up there to study food science. And she has these big ideas on how she's, going to change our food system. And um, last night, as I saw the young people, there was this great hope and optimism in my heart for the future of our industry. Much like I have hope in the fry kids, that ultimately they don't have to come back to the farm. They don't have to do what we've done, but I want them to have that ability to be able to do it should their hearts desire it. And I was thinking about, this is the 250th anniversary of our country this year. And when I think about agriculture and farmers and people who work in a really, really difficult industry, I think about our forefathers and how awesome this country is, and how agriculture is really the backbone of our country. We didn't quit during COVID. We still packed, harvested, shipped. We were the people that kept the world going. And I just, we face so many different challenges, but I'm just really incredibly optimistic about our future, because I think that so long as we continue to invest in the next generation and train and bring the next generation and get them as excited and as passionate about this industry as all of us are, I think we're actually going to be in pretty good shape. But one little piece of advice I would have for the young people is, one thing about the folks on the stage that's very consistent is we all worked in the fields starting out. We all worked in the fields. So even if you're coming out of a fabulous university and you have this degree, it is so incredibly important that you, even if you do it for a month, but that you work on the farm, in the fields, around the packing facilities before you just go into an office somewhere. That would be my biggest piece of advice: to get your boots dirty, get your hands dirty, and understand you will be so much better off for it and go so much further faster if you have that experience.
I love that. Understand the day-to-day of what the farmers are going through.
Absolutely.
Ashley?
Just out of respect for time and to follow up what she said, I will say that a strong domestic food supply is a matter of national security. So that's, and we're all part of that. And this next generation is going to continue to make it better and better.
Awesome. I always tell buyers, ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can. I'm always learning. I learned stuff this week as we're going through the fields. And so from a retailer's perspective and you're talking to your buyers, ask as many questions as you can. No question is a dumb question. So maybe we'll open it up for Q&A for a little bit.
Do we have any questions?
Thank you all so much. Curious for your thoughts on robotics and AI and how you use it in your industries currently and where you see the future going.
AI?
Around AI,
Yep.
some real-time data sensors in the field is kind of some things that we're toying with, monitoring about 10 different things, real time, and it's going to be several years, but it's building out models specific for crop. So it's really, really early, but seems to be some possibilities there. And, you know, the laser weeders that we all have, that's loaded with AI. You know, we're operating it up and down the East Coast, and they're having 24/7 visibility of it in California. And if we have any issue, I mean, because you have to run it 20 hours a day to try to pay for it.
For us, AI, we tried it with forecasting, and one of the problems, it was forecasting 3 years back, which we had, you know, we had COVID and then those market conditions, so it wasn't really accurate information. But I do believe that it is the future, and I think that's why we need a lot of young people that are going to come in and work with AI, because I tell you that data is king. The more you know about data, the better off you're going to be.
And optical sorters inside of our processing plants, you know, that's driven some by AI. If you have any issues, you can really learn a lot from that.
We
Next
still have a
question.
few more minutes. Another question in the audience?
This isn't kind of be for any one of you or all of you, but I'm just wondering, you know, you all have pretty large farms, large businesses, and I'm just wondering, are small farms being left behind, and how can we kind of help support, you know, smaller businesses, smaller farms?
I'm happy to take that. So we started out as a small farm. And the model that we built with that small farm was supplying grocery retailers locally. And we were the face locally to those grocery retailers. And as we grew, had to grow and expand our business to stay in business as a small farm, or really as any kind of farm, we had to lengthen our growing season in order to be able to lengthen our selling season. So the way that we had to do that, and thank God I have a big family and 4 older brothers, and we could kind of scatter out over the country to achieve this goal, we would have to go into new geographic regions to grow, pack, and ship. That didn't negate the fact that at our core, when we would go into a new growing region, we were still local to that region, and we still treated it as if we were the local supplier. And we were able to, the sophisticated packing facilities and all of the things that you need to comply with regulations, whether it's, you know, food safety, you know, handling, or surely handling transportation for growers. We were going into regions of the country where growers existed but hadn't been able to make that financial investment and the right type of, you know, packing facilities and things that they could do to ultimately either stay in business or grow their business. So one of the things that we focused on, because we don't necessarily want to grow every single thing that we sell. We like to have grower partners that are in our areas that are small farmers that we can help monitor, oversee food safety. Small farmers they can't afford to have a food safety person that works for their company full time. So it's important that farmers, like the farmers that are up here today and grower shippers that are up here today, are actually in communities where we can provide the type of support that keeps small farmers in business, where they're not having to pay the overhead. So it's actually a good thing as we grow our business, because we're able to cultivate those growers into our fold, share best practices with them, and also share cost-saving measures. So as we grow, we want to grow. That we want to grow, we want to maintain, and we want to see more small farms develop, because we have a partnership role to play with them in making sure that they have markets for the products that they want to grow. Keeping that small farm in place, growing it, preserving it, is incredibly near and dear to my heart, because that's ultimately still who we are at our core.
Love the transparency and the mentorship that you're talking about there. So, well, we're at time here, and so I'd love to give a round of applause for all our growers on the panel.
Thank you guys so much. And we just wanted everybody to be mindful of our QR code that is up on the screen. That is SEPC's next education offering, which is the first of a series of webinars we're having this year on sustainability. The one that is happening in March is for somebody in your organization who's probably new to sustainability. So it's Sustainability 101. So if you've got somebody maybe who is on food safety or ops that is now trying to handle sustainability, this is the webinar for them. Thank y'all so much for your engagement and attention this morning. We're going to ask that you guys clear the room as we get ready for our next session at 10 a.m., Power of Produce. Another round of applause for our panelists.
Good.